and get out quickly."
Charlotte's harsh words saddened me. We may not get along, but we're family after all. How could she say something so heartless? As I felt lost, Thomas grinned and said, "Well, that went as planned." Mission accomplished. Well, that went as planned. Mission accomplished. At that moment, I had no idea of the chaos that was about to unfold. My name is Violet. I met my husband Thomas at work. I work in the office of a shipping company, while Thomas is a truck driver. My first impression was that he's a robust guy, both physically and in personality. He's good at his job and kind to his colleagues. However, he wasn't so adept at the romantic game. Whether it was making a move or proposing, he was like a pitcher who only threw fastballs, no change-ups. But I prefer a straightforward man over a guy who thinks he's a playboy. As our relationship progressed and tensions eased, I found him quite interesting. Above all, he gave me a sense of security that I could rely on him. We got married and were blessed with 2 children. Our son and daughter have moved out and live on their own. Now, Thomas, Dad, and I live in a large house. Mom passed away 5 years ago due to illness. Thomas and I still work together at the same shipping company. Thomas has been promoted to a supervisor and now handles the dispatching. We had a happy marriage, but one worry was my brother Jason. Dad is soft on Jason. Jason has been dreaming of becoming a rock singer since he was a teenager. He's still chasing his dream, pompadour and all, no matter his age. I won't discourage anyone from following their dreams. However, when he runs out of money, he comes to borrow from Dad. And Dad, being soft, lends him the money.
"Dad, lending money is fine, but has he ever paid you back?"
Violet, when you lend money, you should do it with the intention of giving. That means you shouldn't expect it back. Remember that.
"But Jason thinks he'll somehow make it. He's underestimating life's challenges. Isn't that risky?"
When I was young, I dreamed of becoming a novelist. But Victoria's parents said if I was going to marry her, I needed a stable job. So, I gave up my dream and chose to marry. I don't regret getting married, but I do regret giving up my dream. This was the first time I had ever heard about my dad's younger days. So, that's why I want to support Jason's dreams.
But it doesn't seem like Jason's putting in much effort. Do you really think he can achieve his dreams while goofing off all day?
Mountain climbing isn't just about conquering the peak. Every step you take along the way is part of the story.
Wow, you sound like a poet. Makes sense since you wanted to be a novelist.
Come on, you're making me blush with such direct praise.
I'm not praising you.
Initially, I was worried that Jason had some dirt on Dad and was blackmailing him. But it turns out Dad also chases dreams, so he probably understands Jason's desire to escape reality. One day, Jason brought a woman home.
"Let me introduce you. This is Charlotte."
From her name, I expected a dainty woman. She was, well, big. "Hi, I'm Charlotte." "I'm Violet, the sister." "Nice to meet you." Charlotte is 5 years younger than me, but much larger in build. Our first impression of her wasn't great. She was curt to both me and Dad, leaving us with the impression that she had poor manners. Eventually, Jason and Charlotte got married, so she became my younger sister-in-law. Neither Jason nor Charlotte held full-time jobs. They were always quitting their part-time jobs in a huff. Charlotte practices jiu-jitsu and has a short temper, often bragging about putting her arrogant bosses or seniors in joint locks. I just hope she never gets arrested for it. Jason brags about stories that aren't brag-worthy like headbutting a disrespectful boss. Two kinds of stories I really can't stand. bragging about bad behavior in the past, and bragging about fights. I think many women also find these kinds of bragging a turnoff. One day, Jason came to borrow money from Dad again, and I finally spoke up.
Jason, you're working, right? Why don't you have any money? I got into an argument with the plant manager just because I forgot to put away a cart. I told him it was workplace harassment. He yelled again, so I gave him a flying knee kick to the chin.
Charlotte seemed pleased, asking,
Total KO?
I decided that if Dad wouldn't say it, I would.
Every workplace has people you won't get along with. But you know, even people I initially disliked turned out to be decent later on. I've often been glad I didn't pick a fight. You and I lead different lives. My pride is taller than the One World Trade Center. So, yelling at me is practically asking for a flying knee.
I couldn't believe my ears when Charlotte cut in.
You're siding with a boss who harasses people? That's not what I'm saying. Oh, so you're lecturing me? You better be ready for this. Ready? Want to take this outside?
Or here's fine, too. I was flabbergasted. What is she, a teenager? Feeling threatened, I walked away. I couldn't believe she was actually picking a fight. Jason didn't intervene. Would he have stopped it if it were his wife fighting his sister? Getting hurt would be the last straw. I knew I had to watch out for that couple. When I turned 50, Dad got sick and was hospitalized. It wasn't long before we had to say goodbye. People said he lived a long life at 80, but I didn't feel that way. The era of living to 100. I still wanted to talk about many things with Dad. When Thomas and I were alone, he said,
Violet, actually, Lawrence.
What?
Never mind.
What do you mean, never mind? Just tell me.
Later.
Before much time had passed since the funeral, Charlotte approached me.
Did Lawrence leave a will? A will? Probably not. He was hospitalized so suddenly. And if there's no will, then the inheritance. You're already talking about inheritance? I guess you're not even sad. How dare you? Want me to put you in the hospital? Try me.
When I raised my voice, Charlotte grabbed my arm in anger. I was taken aback, but didn't want to apologize.
Should we call the police? What are you doing? You made me sound like a monster for bringing up the inheritance, so I thought I'd teach you a life lesson with an arm lock. You're the one who's wrong, Violet. Enough! Don't yell! What are we going to do about the inheritance?
I was momentarily speechless, but then I glared at Jason.
Jason, aren't you sad that Dad passed away? That's irrelevant. Stop calling me stupid. I don't want to be called stupid by someone as stupid as you. What did you just say?
The atmosphere was tense until Thomas arrived.
What's going on here? Wife, you better tell your husband to raise the kids right.
Those words crossed the line.
I'll pass that message right along to Jason. Good on you. I'm fed up with you, Violet. This makes my decision easier. Decision?
Jason dropped a bombshell.
I'm the eldest son. That means the house and Dad's inheritance are all mine. Are you out of your mind? I'm perfectly sane,
Jason said, stone-faced. Just as we were stunned by his audacity, Thomas spoke up.
Violet, let's try to keep a cool head. We're not making any progress.
Fine.
We sat down at the table to hash it out.
The inheritance is all mine and Charlotte's. Violet, I want you to give up your claim. That's ridiculous. Our dad isn't rich. If we split it between two households, there won't be much left. There's only two of Dad's children, me and Jason. So it should be divided between us.
But Jason scowled.
Look, Violet, you and Thomas both have jobs and are doing fine. I'm the one pursuing my dreams, so I'm the one who needs the money.
Why don't you get a job, Jason?
Let me finish. Living in this house means no rent, and with the inheritance, I can take on the world. Dad was cheering for me, you know? The best way to honor him is to pack Carnegie Hall.
You can't even pack the local park. What if I do fill Carnegie Hall? Will you put your money where your mouth is? What are you talking about? I seriously considered calling the police.
Thomas, what do you say? Can you give in?
I cannot. Then Thomas calmly asked Jason.
So you're asking Violet to relinquish her claim? Yes.
And you're okay with that, Jason? What are you talking about?
Of course it's not okay.
At that point, Charlotte glared at me.
Shut up. You've been yapping like a puppy this whole time.
Such words should not be tolerated. When I glared at her, Charlotte glared back with an angry face.
Is it cute to yap like a puppy only until you're in your 20s? Stop pretending to be a young girl. It's embarrassing for a 50-year-old hag. Take that back. I won't tolerate insults.
Thomas, wasn't it?
You should have set her straight.
What a useless couple you are. At this point, I couldn't keep quiet.
If you weren't as big as a hippo, I'd have slapped you a long time ago.
For a moment, Charlotte looked dumbfounded, but then turned to Jason.
Did your sister just call me a hippo? Violet, apologize while you still can.
I'll apologize when Charlotte does.
Enough, both of you. Violet, calm down.
Fine.
Let's proceed with the disinheritance, Violet.
I looked at Thomas with wide eyes, but something in his gaze told me he had a plan. Why else would he agree to such an unreasonable demand? I had no choice but to trust Thomas.
So, Jason, just to confirm, you're fine with Violet being disinherited? I've been saying that. Stop making me repeat myself. It's annoying.
What an infuriating couple.
A wife who acts younger than she is, and a husband who thinks he's smart but is actually dumb. Leave the money and move out already.
Charlotte's harsh words saddened me. Aren't we still family, despite our differences? How could she say such merciless things? Why should we be the ones to leave? I couldn't agree to this.
We'll find a new place soon, but we have belongings. Please give us a bit more time.
If you take too long, I'll throw everything outside.
Try it, and I'll call the police. Think I'll be scared if you mention the police? I'm not afraid. Call the Marines if you want to arrest me.
Unable to contain my anger, I stepped outside.
I wonder if Dad is also at fault.
Thomas smiled at my confusion.
It worked. Our plan was a success. What?
These moments make me thankful for our savings. With savings, you don't need to borrow money. Even with zero debt, there are still substantial monthly expenses, rent, utilities, food, taxes. Taking on more debt would naturally make things tougher. I've always made it a point to avoid loans, pay in full for what I buy, and save a bit each month. Years of this kind of effort mean we won't be in a bind when emergencies happen. Maybe Jason set a bad example. He lives impulsively, and when he's out of money, he turns to Dad. It was one thing when Dad was working, but he had no problem borrowing even after Dad retired. I always tell my kids how important it is to save, so they don't end up like that. Thomas and I settled into our new condo. Once we had finished unpacking, Thomas said,
Let's consult a lawyer first. A lawyer? To initiate the renunciation of inheritance. Are we really giving it up?
That's when Thomas finally told me what he had almost mentioned before.
While playing chess with Lawrence, he quietly mentioned that he lost all his savings and is in debt. What? Because of Jason?
Yes. That made them even more unforgivable.
Maybe that couple also shortened Dad's life. You're not entirely right, but you're close. Huh?
Thomas told me something even more shocking. Charlotte had yelled loudly from behind Dad and pushed him with both hands. It wasn't just a one-time prank, it had happened multiple times. Dad started fearing it was an attempt to induce a heart attack and couldn't say anything when Jason came to borrow money. I never thought they'd go that far.
In other words, Lawrence has much more debt than assets. You get what I'm saying? Yes, now I get it.
Inheritors receive not just assets, but also debt. If the debt exceeds the assets, you can renounce the inheritance.
Let's ask the lawyer.
That's the best course.
We consulted a lawyer and successfully renounced the inheritance. Just as I thought they might show up, Jason and his wife barged into our new condo.
Violet, you set us up, didn't you? Set you up? What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. There's no inheritance from Dad, just debt. You knew, didn't you? I had no idea. This won't end with just an arm lock. Be ready for a chokehold.
I calmly took out my mobile phone.
Hello, is this the police? What are you doing?
Charlotte grabbed my phone and shut it off.
Violet, how are you going to take responsibility for this?
Then Thomas stepped in.
Jason, I recall asking you multiple times if it's okay to relinquish the inheritance, right? So, you knew it was drowning in debt, didn't you? I had no idea. Whenever Jason needed money, Lawrence would lend it without a second thought. He gave out big amounts like it was nothing. I assumed Lawrence must be well off.
Jason was at a loss for words when Charlotte interjected.
Nice try, but you're not weaseling your way out of this. We inherited those debts. You two need to do something about it. What responsibility are you talking about? My spouse and I are not responsible for any of this. Hey, are you going to do something about this or not? Threats won't work on me. Or should we lay it all out for a third party? I'll share every detail of what happened. Jason, are you okay with that? How would I know that Dad went into debt just to give Jason money? If I knew, I would have stopped it. Do you even realize you shortened Dad's life?
Unable to respond, Jason stayed silent, but Charlotte was defiant.
If you're going to say that, are you okay with both of you ending up in the hospital? Enough of this nonsense. If you lay a hand on me or coerce me, it's jail time. Your threats don't work on me. You're 45 and talking like some high school delinquent.
Charlotte smirked, glanced back, and looked at Thomas again.
Wait, were those lines aimed at me? Right after saying it, you coerce me? Coercion is a serious crime, you know. You won't get probation. Idiot. Are you a judge now? It's complex to decide whether probation applies in any crime. Don't talk nonsense when you know nothing.
Seeing Charlotte's tirade, Thomas turned to Jason.
Jason, are you okay with this? Charlotte, just shut up for a second. Excuse me. Who are you telling to shut up?
Feeling something dangerous in Charlotte's menacing glare, I said.
If you want to fight, do it outside. I won't allow it in my house. Let's go back for now.
As Jason stepped out into the hallway, Charlotte followed. I quickly closed the door and locked it. I could hear their arguing voices, but I was more concerned about causing a disturbance in the neighborhood.
Did you just tell me to shut up? What are you going to do if I call the police? Don't worry, I'll call an ambulance in a minute.
A few seconds later, I heard Jason's screams from down the hall, but I pretended not to know him. Immediately after that, I heard what sounded like a dying scream, but it had nothing to do with me. Jason and Charlotte had insulted us, so obviously they'd severed ties with our family. So whether they divorce or Charlotte gets arrested for assault, it has nothing to do with me. A few days later, I got a call from Jason.
Violet, I was wrong. Will you help me? Who is this? Don't be like that. We're siblings, right?
I couldn't help but feel it was too late. Turns out Jason was in the hospital. Apparently, Charlotte had broken his arm. This was like something straight out of a comic book.
Ever heard the term you reap what you sow? I'm genuinely sorry. Could you cut me some slack? I can't afford the hospital bills.
That's unfortunate. No matter how coldly I brushed him off, Jason kept begging.
Please, for the love of God, help me. I'm not God. Is Thomas there? Don't call him by his first name. We're no longer family.
My words seemed to hit hard, and Jason was speechless.
Switching the call.
Thomas took over. After a brief chat, he hung up.
Let's go to the hospital. Don't give him a cent.
I know. Thomas and I went to the hospital, but not to visit. It's better to say it face to face. Jason pleaded in a polite tone.
Please help me. Debt collectors have come to the first floor of the hospital, the nurse told me. I'm scared to death.
But Thomas looked stern.
After the insults you and your spouse hurled, it's only natural for us to cut ties. That's not what I meant. Well, if we're not cutting ties, then why disinherit? Disinheritance means cutting family ties.
Jason looked down and spoke softly.
I apologize for what I've done. But I need your help. I have no one else to turn to. What about Charlotte? We're divorced.
A family falling apart, then.
She's at the police station for assault.
It felt unreal.
You repeatedly called my wife an idiot. If I had called Charlotte that, you'd never forgive me.
Jason looked troubled. People who spew hate often don't remember what they've said. But those on the receiving end don't forget.
I have a good memory. I remember every word you two have said. I've heard it from Charlotte as well. The wife should be properly disciplined by the husband. What does that even mean? Explain it to me.
Thomas presses on logically.
What did Charlotte mean when she said a wife should lay down her body? Is that even something you should say to a woman?
Those are not words you say to a woman. Jason seems to have forgotten not just his own comments, but also those made by Charlotte.
Yelling like a little puppy, that's a clear insult. As for my dear wife, you called her a young wannabe or a 50-year-old hag. Don't repeat it.
Sorry. Thomas doesn't let up.
You said it to me as well. When I asked repeatedly if I should disclaim my inheritance, you told me to stop making you repeat yourself because it's annoying. It's too late for any excuses now.
Jason lowers his head on the bed, looking like he's about to cry.
I'm really sorry. Can you please find it in your heart to forgive me? No way. Charlotte called my wife an old hag, and you insulted me by saying I'm not mentally sharp. By the way, what does not mentally sharp mean? Explain it to me.
Thomas glares at the trembling Jason.
Explain it. What?
Jason shakes and his eyes go wide with a terrified look.
If I weren't in a hospital, I'd be yelling right now. Let's just cut ties completely. You're the one who said to leave the money and move out quickly.
Thomas looks down at the dejected Jason, then turns to me.
Shall we go?
Yes.
After all was said, I thought Thomas might end up offering financial help out of a sense of divine mercy. But he stood his ground. As we left the hospital, a smile crossed my face.
I saw your scary side today.
There's nothing like that.
Be kind to me, okay?
Of course.
The storm has passed. From now on, I hope for peaceful days, basking in the warmth of spring sunlight.
Wait, are you trying to use the bathroom? Dirty old people are banned from using it. We use that toilet too, you know. If you guys use it, our brand new toilet will get dirty immediately, won't it?
Sorry, but you'll have to make do with peeing in the bushes outside. Oh, and don't do it in the garden, okay? If you dirty our precious home even a little, I'll never forgive you.
Both we were taken aback by Emily and Wilson's words. A bathroom ban? That's just unthinkable. No matter how much they dislike us, such behavior is inexcusable. We have endured harsh words from our son and his wife before. As we're the kind of people who dislike fights, we've always quietly accepted their treatment. But now, we've reached our limit. We need to make it clear what happens when they make enemies of us. I started plotting a scenario for revenge. I'm sure this plan will work. My name is Sarah, a 62-year-old homemaker. I live with my husband. I met Johnson, my husband, at the company where we used to work. After Johnson's persistent pursuit, we started dating and smoothly transitioned into marriage. I was blessed with a son with Johnson. A lively boy. We named him Wilson and raised him with care. Wilson grew up healthily and eventually found a job. He married a woman named Emily and built a family. I remember the feeling genuinely happy when he first introduced Emily to us. But that happiness didn't last long. Everything went awry when I realized why she had married him. After marriage, they lived with us. One day, Wilson and Johnson were out, and only Emily and I were at home. At first, we were chatting amicably in the living room, but then Emily's mobile phone rang. It seemed she received a call.
Sorry, Sarah, it looks like it's from a friend.
With that, she excused herself and went back to her room. Left alone in the living room, I decided to clean the house to pass the time. As I was passing Emily's room, I inadvertently overheard her conversation. Her voice was so loud that I couldn't help but hear.
Seriously, those old folks are living too long. If they suddenly died, we could get the inheritance. I married into the family for the president's fortune, but this is just hell.
Her words felt like a cold shower to me. Actually, Johnson's father was the president of well-known top-tier company. However, the company was set to be inherited by his brother. Still, being part of the president's family, Johnson had some share of the wealth. It turned out Emily had married Wilson with that very intention in mind. They probably believed that once we passed away, the inheritance would become theirs. In fact, we had always treated Wilson and his wife with this in mind. Such behavior couldn't be tolerated. I shared this with Johnson that night. Initially, he was shocked, saying, "Really?" but he trusted my words. After discussing, we decided not to act immediately but to observe if Emily would reveal her true intentions. Maybe, in the meantime, she might change her attitude and start treating us like a real family. It was a decision made with the faint hope. But things didn't go as expected. To test Wilson and his wife, we observed their behavior. We invited them out, asked for help with chores, and so on. Gradually, they seemed to find us a nuisance, and their attitude changed.
Wilson, you're free now, right? I'm sorry to ask you, but can you give me a hand to do the laundry? My back hurts.
One day, seeing Wilson relaxing in the living room, I asked him. Although Emily had been the one to speak harshly that day, Johnson suspected they might be in this together. We suspect that maybe Wilson feels in the same way. So, I started to approach Wilson to understand his feelings. At my request, Wilson looked up from his mobile phone, sighed with annoyance, and said,
"Can't you do that yourself, Mom? You're a mother, after all. Shouldn't you be able to handle the household chores by yourself?"
He then returned his gaze to his mobile phone. It became clear that he had no intention of helping. His attitude seemed to say, "I have no intention of being a family with you." This thought sent a chill down my spine.
Don't say that. Family should help each other when in trouble. You have your own family now, Wilson. You need to act responsibly.
My voice trembled, reflecting my fear. If my suspicions were true, it meant that even Wilson, whom we had lovingly raised, was betraying us. That was something I couldn't bear. Desperately, I pleaded, "Please help me." But Wilson didn't even look up from his phone or show any sign of getting up from the sofa. His unwillingness to help was evident. Persisting in my request, he let out a heavy sigh and continued.
"Look,"
he continued.
"Enough is enough. Yes, you're my mother, but that doesn't give you the right to be selfish. I have a wife, Emily, and I need to work for her. I'm already exhausted every day, and now you're asking me to do chores too? That's cruel. Don't ask us to do such things anymore. We are essentially strangers."
Essentially strangers. Those words pierced deeply into my heart. It confirmed my fears. Both Wilson and Emily seem to be after Johnson's inheritance. They seem indifferent to us, thinking as long as they receive the inheritance, that's all that matters. This betrayal from family deeply wounded me. Yet, we couldn't foresee something even worse. I immediately told Johnson about Wilson's possible intent for the inheritance. Johnson, seemingly already convinced.
"I thought as much."
He nodded. And so, our family dynamics became distorted. Amidst all this, Wilson and his wife decided to move out. When they brought it up, we couldn't help but feel relieved. By then, living with them had become unbearable. Even sharing the same house with them was distressing. They wanted to live in a new single-family home, which would require a significant amount of money. To hasten their move, we decided to provide financial assistance.
Dad, Mom, thanks. Family is indeed valuable.
Knowing the underlying meaning of Wilson's words, we couldn't genuinely rejoice. The construction of their new house was completed, and it was the day of their move. They packed up some of their belongings and left the house. A week later, we visited their new home with a housewarming gift. Though I didn't want to go, I remembered my father-in-law teaching about maintaining certain courtesies, so I decided to endure it a bit. Nice house, isn't it? Smells like new construction. Their home was more beautiful than expected, probably due to the money spent on it. After being shown around various rooms, when we gave the celebration gift in the living room.
"Thank you so much,"
she said. She seemed pleased as she put away the gift. While chatting in the living room, I felt the need to use the restroom.
"Where's the bathroom? May I use it?"
I said. To my request, Wilson and his wife responded unbelievably.
"Wait, are you trying to use the bathroom? Dirty old people are banned from using it. We use that toilet too, you know. If you use it, our brand new toilet will get dirty immediately, won't it?"
Followed by his words,
"Sorry, but you'll have to make do with peeing in the bushes outside. Oh, and don't do it in the garden, okay? If you dirty our precious home even a little, I'll never forgive you."
Their words made me feel dizzy. It was too cruel, regardless of how much they disliked us. At that moment, they were like strangers to me. There was no familial affection left. That's why I decided to start my revenge. I planned to ruin them thoroughly. I secretly devised a scenario for it. Exchanging glances with Johnson, who was just as stunned. It seemed Johnson was thinking the same as me.
"We don't want to be a nuisance, and since we've given the housewarming gift, maybe we should leave if we're not wanted."
There was no reason to stay in their house any longer. We had fulfilled our duty by giving a housewarming gift. If they were going to be that terrible to us, we didn't need to stay.
Right. Our presence here only seems to bother them. It's better to leave now.
I had anticipated being unwelcome, but to be told things like being banned from using the toilet or to go in the bushes was too much.
Yeah, leave right now. Don't want this house getting old and musty because of some old people. Don't stay any longer than necessary.
Old people making the house musty? That's just absurd. Realizing how much my own son despised us was a bit of a shock. But I couldn't see Wilson as my son anymore. I'd deal with these conflicting feelings later. For now, the priority was to leave.
And don't come over unless absolutely necessary. We've got your gift, so you're of no use to us now. Maybe see you at the baby shower, but that's it.
Even though she demanded us to leave right away, she still wants a gift. What greedy people. Though giving them gifts was burdensome, we were fortunately not short on money. So, to keep the peace and calm myself, I accepted it.
Then let's sever ties. If you despise us so much, it must be hard to continue as a family, right?
Anything is fine with me as long as we don't have to deal with you and your family, who are troublesome.
Are they high on their own anger? Emily quickly agreed to my suggestion, likely not understanding the consequences of her decision. We gathered our things and left Wilson's house. They hardly even saw us out. But this was just the beginning of our revenge. I couldn't wait to see them fall into the hell we were about to create. I can't help but look forward to that moment. Back home, I shared the revenge plan with Johnson. He said,
"This is going to be interesting."
He laughed and was in agreement with my plan. They say spouses become like mirrors of each other, and I really felt that was true. Since then, we had been very busy. To complete our revenge, various preparations were necessary. Before we knew it, about a week had passed. Despite being busy, we were leading a calm life without any major incidents with Wilson and his wife. But it seemed about time for a disruption. As I was expecting this, the phone rang. Johnson and I exchanged glances. Sure enough, it was Wilson on the line. I put the call on speaker so Johnson could hear and spoke to Wilson.
"Hello, Wilson? What's up? Did something happen?"
It was surprising he called so nonchalantly after what had happened. Normally, after such an incident, I'd think it would be awkward to make a phone call. But Wilson, sounding cornered and desperate, blurted out.
"What's happened, you ask? What have you two done? Thanks to you, I'm in a terrible situation. Do something about it now."
Wilson's statement was disjointed, and I couldn't understand what he was talking about. Of course, I had orchestrated this revenge, so I could guess what might be happening to him.
"What exactly do you mean? Tell me everything from the start, I don't understand."
Since I had no idea what he was accusing us of, I couldn't respond. Urging Wilson to explain, he started his story in an angry tone. It seemed the trouble started when he went to work after the incident. While working, Wilson noticed something unusual. The looks directed at him by his colleagues were unusually cold. Wilson, who tends to be overly concerned with others' perceptions, found it unbearable to stay at work and left early that day. Hoping it was just his imagination, he went to work again the next day, but the cold stares remained unchanged. He confronted a colleague about it, but all he got in response was, "Ask yourself." Just that, and they wouldn't tell me anything more. Furthermore, it wasn't just his department colleagues who were giving him cold stares. It seemed as if everyone in the company, from high-ranking superiors to colleagues in other departments, were looking at him with disdain. He felt as if every employee he encountered was regarding him with contempt. Despite racking his brain, Wilson couldn't think of a reason for the cold treatment at work. He hadn't made any mistakes on the job. Eventually, he surmised that my husband, Johnson, a member of the company's founding family, and I must have been involved.
"What have you two done? Because of you, I can't work anymore. You need to take responsibility."
Wilson lashed out at us one-sidedly. Indeed, the frigid reception he faced wasn't a figment of his imagination, it was a part of our scheme. We had promptly informed my brother-in-law about the ordeal with Wilson and his wife. He values us greatly and was furious upon hearing it. Unfortunately, my brother-in-law isn't one to keep secrets. He inadvertently leaked our story to his secretary and other managerial staff. Soon enough, the entire company knew about their misdeeds, and everyone began to scorn Wilson.
This is too much. Fix it now. I can't work in that kind of environment.
Indeed, someone like him, who is easily swayed by others' opinions, couldn't possibly continue working in such a hostile environment. However, his employment was actually a result of nepotism. He had been lazy during his student days, lacking notable educational achievements or qualifications. Since he couldn't find a satisfactory job, his sympathetic uncle hired him at his company. Could someone like Wilson really manage a proper job search? From my perspective, it seemed unlikely. That company was his only option. Yet, working there under current circumstances was impossible for him.
Please, you have to do something. I can't work under those stairs. You caused this, right? Then fix it,
he yelled over the phone. But I had no intention of forgiving him.
We've disowned you, remember? Why are you asking for help now?
That was all Emily's doing. I always considered you and Dad as my family. Families are supposed to help each other, right? So, help me.
Indeed, families should help each other. But he had misunderstood the meaning of family. You help because they are your family, not treat them as family only when help is needed. Feeling the conversation was pointless, I ended the call with him. Afterward, my phone kept ringing incessantly, so I blocked his number. That was how we completely severed ties with our own son. Our revenge was far from over. The day after our conversation with Wilson, my phone rang again. This time, it was Emily.
Sarah, please open the entrance. I have something to discuss, including about Wilson. Let me in quickly.
As soon as I answered the phone, she blurted out such things. It seemed that she, thinking it best to resolve matters directly, was waiting at the entrance of our house, eager to talk. Well, it was our former house, after all.
Emily, we're not at that house anymore.
Indeed, it was our former home. Since then, we had sold the house where we lived with them and moved to a new home. A brand new, sparkling single-family home. Our new home, chosen with a slightly competitive spirit, was more spacious and grander than Wilson and Emily's.
What? Then where are you? Things are terrible here. If we don't know where you are, how can we receive the inheritance? Tell me your current address.
She seemingly failed to comprehend the meaning of disownment. To disown means no longer being family, and inheritance is not passed to non-family members. We had even updated our will to ensure that, come what may, Wilson and his wife would not receive any inheritance. However, she appeared to misunderstand, thinking that if some family connection remained, they could still inherit.
Emily, you can no longer receive any inheritance. We've disowned you, remember? We're no longer family. Why would we give an inheritance to someone who's not family?
I was astonished at her lack of understanding. Her ignorance was so profound that it was almost laughable. Surprised by my response, she exclaimed.
What?
She exclaimed in a loud voice.
What? I didn't know that. That's a real problem if we can't get the inheritance. Let's forget about the disownment, okay? We're still family, right?
Her self-centeredness was astounding. It was baffling how someone could be so obsessed with money. Her illogical and selfish statements left me speechless. Misinterpreting my silence as agreement, she continued.
How about we live together? You've moved out of this house, right? I just realized how lonely it is without you, Sarah. Our house is big, so you can live here too. Let's live together as a family.
And yet, this was the same person who had once called us dirty old people and drove us out. Now she was even suggesting living together, clearly all for the sake of inheritance. It was obvious that restarting life with them was out of the question. I wondered if she even understood that. Could she really not understand even that?
Sorry, but we'll have to decline. And from now on, please don't contact us. We've disowned you, so we're no longer family. And non-family members won't inherit anything. Please understand and give up.
No! That's unacceptable! Please, Sarah, forgive us!
When I firmly declared our disownment, Emily seemed to finally grasp its meaning and desperately clung to any hope. But my decision was final. And likely Johnson's as well. Therefore, I ended the call with her and immediately blocked her number. This way, she couldn't contact us again. They wouldn't know our current whereabouts. Essentially, we've completed our disownment. We felt a sense of relief, having cleanly severed this unpleasant connection. Later, I heard from acquaintances and brother-in-law that Wilson and Emily began fighting incessantly over the inheritance and their jobs, leading to a divorce. They argued bitterly over alimony and property division, even hiring lawyers and taking their disputes to court. After the divorce was finalized, Emily returned to her parents' home. She seemed certain that her biological parents would accept her, but when they actually saw her and learned of the situation, they were furious. Apparently, she was promptly kicked out of the house. Wilson, having quit his job, struggled to find new employment and is now working tirelessly in part-time roles to make ends meet. Meanwhile, Johnson and I are enjoying a peaceful and happy life. The weight of the Wilson affair lifted, we've found newfound freedom. We're planning to go on a trip soon, taking brother-in-law and his wife along. Johnson and I have been making plans for this trip together. It's our way of thanking him for his help in our revenge. We are carefully planning this vacation. Family is about supporting each other and helping in times of need. But that doesn't always mean being related by blood. Some, like Wilson and Emily, disregard even their own family. This incident has deeply ingrained that lesson in us.